Hello, and welcome to Virtual Investor Conferences. On behalf of OTC Markets, we're very pleased you joined us for our AI and Technology Conference. Our next live presentation is from HydroGraph Clean Power. Please note you can submit questions for the presenter in a box to the left of the slides, and you can view a company's availability for one-on-one meetings by clicking Book a Meeting in the top toolbar. At this point, I'm very pleased to welcome our next presenter, Kirsten Brewer. She's the President and Chief Executive Officer of HydroGraph Clean Power, which trades on the OTCQB venture market under the symbol HGRAF and on the CSE under the symbol HG. Welcome, Kirsten.
And thank you for having me. And so now getting started, HydroGraph is a synthetic graphene production company. Graphene, as I'm sure many of you are aware, is a nanomaterial. It is effectively one atomic layer of carbon atoms, and it is the strongest and most conductive material that has ever been discovered. As a supermaterial, it will help to usher in an age of nanotechnology, which will touch virtually every known industry. So the ages of man have more or less been defined by the materials that we've used, whether we're speaking of the Bronze Age all the way to the age of silicon. I believe that graphene will be the dominant nanomaterial in this new age of nanotechnology. And like silicon, of course, it's bringing with it the conductivity benefits. But I believe that because it also is bringing mechanical strength and a lot of other benefits, it will have more impact, for example, as opposed to silicon. And because the natural world is mostly comprised of carbon, graphene is very versatile. So it can positively improve almost every known material. And so really what HydroGraph does is we provably produce the highest quality graphene in the industry at the greatest cost efficiency. We are able to be so efficient because we have a patented explosion synthesis process, effectively meaning we detonate hydrocarbon gases. So you can see in this CAD rendition of our reactor, we have these carbon steel chambers. So each reactor has four 70-liter chambers. We pump in acetylene and oxygen. We have electrodes at the top and bottom of each chamber. They ignite, it destabilizes the molecules inside. Acetylene, you would know, is a welding gas. So you can imagine it's bringing a lot of energy with it into this reaction. So the temperature then shoots up to 2500 Kelvin, the temperature of a cold start, and all of the carbon that was in the acetylene gets crystallized into graphene powder. The oxygen and hydrogen have to go somewhere. That is exhausted as syngas, that is a commodity gas. At scale, we will have an offtake agreement for that. So effectively, no waste, and again, extremely efficient due to the exothermic reaction. We require almost no energy to initiate the reaction. So this unit is a very low CapEx design, and our graphene, we have various selling prices depending on if there's a post-process for the graphene, but the graphene in general sells for hundreds of thousands of dollars per ton. We are now speaking with more than 60 active customers. And so going back to the unit, this one unit produces 10 metric tons. And we do have interest, I would say between 5 and 8 of the customers that we're speaking to are looking for an excess of 1,000 metric tons annually. The average customer is more likely looking for tens of tons or hundreds of tons. So these units are built to be very scalable. We can produce these units in 2 to 3 months. All of the components are made in the US, and we are focused overwhelmingly on US manufacturing. We will be announcing a new site within the US in the coming 2 months. A couple highlights on the company. We were founded in 2017. We have roughly 16 employees, 3 patents granted, 8 pending. I believe our technical team has recently applied for a few more, so we'll have to uptick that number. And then as mentioned, we have multiple graphene products. We have in this one detonation, what we call FGA1, that's our flagship product. But we have a number of ways that we can either increase the conductivity, increase the surface area, add chemical groups to the graphene, and all of those graphene derivatives would of course come with a higher price tag. So a little bit on graphene. I think most people have heard of graphene, so I'll gloss over this slide a little bit, but I want to reinforce that while it has these superlative qualities, stronger than steel, harder than a diamond, more conductive than copper, etc., these are, I would say, theoretical limits. Graphene is a very new material. It was only discovered in 2004. To compare it with some others, silicon took about 60 years to be commercialized, carbon fiber took 50. So it is relatively young in the world of materials. And I would say that every day that we engage in graphene-related research, we get closer and closer to these theoretical maximums. So graphene is an additive. You're often going to use only 1% with the various materials that you're positively improving. And reaching these theoretical maximums is heavily dependent on the quality of graphene, how it's being processed, and of course, the material that it's used to positively improve. So a little bit on the team. So, you know, myself, president and CEO, I was actually the first employee. So I joined in the beginning of 2020 in Vancouver. I have a master's in material science and engineering and really had created our first strategies and go-to-market plan. I have been CEO since last March, so roughly 1 year now. And I will also point out Stephen Corkill, he's our VP of Operations. He has designed and built all of our Hyperion units to date. And then, of course, the brilliant Dr. Chris Sorensen. He is the inventor of the process. He is a physicist. He was a professor at Kansas State University, and he was actually studying aerosol gels. So he was forcing these detonations with different hydrocarbon gases. And just through this serendipitous experiment, he had discovered this high yield, incredibly powerful process for the production of pristine graphene. Kind of the irony of the story is that was the peak of the hype cycle. And so everyone was talking about monolayer graphene, and he wasn't sure if what he had created had much value. And now we have really reinforced through abundant data that we do firmly believe we have not only the highest purity, but the highest performing product in the market. So this is a very important slide to understand because graphene, again, being a newer material with a new industry that is really growing every day, there are some poor products in the market, so to speak. So this is a slightly dated study, but from feedback that I've received within the industry and from customers, I do believe that it still rings true. So with more than, at this point in 2017, 300 companies claiming to produce graphene, the Journal of Advanced Materials did an analysis on 60 companies, and they found that there is almost no high-quality graphene in the market as defined by the ISO, that no company produces over 50% graphene content, with the majority producing less than 10%, effectively meaning that companies are producing graphite powder and not graphene. And if we think of the dominant feedstocks, most companies are, of course, using graphite, and then they have mechanical or chemical exfoliation to get it down to one atomic layer or few atomic layer. There are some synthetic approaches, of which we are one. Most synthetic approaches are going to be using methane and then with a microwave plasma process to crack the methane and then convert the carbon and the methane into graphene. We, of course, don't face any of these issues because our feedstock, acetylene, is just C2H2. It's incredibly pure. And we also believe it's the temperature that we achieve which gives us our purity and our crystallinity. So every time we turn on that reactor, we have identical batches. Every single time we've scaled up that reactor, we have exactly the same type of graphene, which is 99.8% pure carbon content graphene. It is 100% graphene, but the carbon content is 99.8. We have a tiny amount of oxygen that's incorporated that really significantly increases our conductivity, which we believe is a strong benefit. We have been tested as pure by numerous international labs, and we are also verified as a genuine graphene producer by the Graphene Council. So overall, our investment thesis is relatively simple. We have the highest purity graphene in the market. Again, abundant data to prove that point. We have the most consistent production method, and again, abundant data to back that up. Fully green footprint, we use virtually no energy and we have no waste. Graphene has truly global reach as it can positively improve so many industries. we have a very strong economic profile. To say that we're operating at 60% margin would be a conservative figure. And again, significant valuation upside. Our process is a very low CapEx process. There are very large end markets that we're approaching. And again, really our defining feature is our scalability. And so this is another very important slide to understand. So we are partnered with the GEEK, and that is the Graphene Engineering Innovation Center that is located in Manchester within the UK. This is effectively the birthplace of graphene. So this is where it was discovered with the now infamous Scotch tape method, where researchers quite literally put a piece of Scotch tape on graphite until they eventually isolated one atomic layer, proving the existence of graphene. So because it was discovered here, there's erupted this very strong ecosystem with material science expertise. And really because of this movement in Manchester, the University of Manchester, where it was discovered, started this innovation hub, which is the GEEK. And so we have a team of PhD scientists at the GEEK that are engaged in research that would be more confidential to HydroGraph. But the GEEK team has their own staff, of course, that is separate to HydroGraph. And because they are government affiliated, they are under mandate to really use the best performing graphene for every project that they do. So there's a huge amount of customer interest just because of the really level of experience in working with graphene. The GEEK staff has experience, firsthand experience working with virtually all of the commercially available graphenes globally. So this has created a fantastic system with a lot of trust where customers can come, they can create a project. So perhaps it is Rolls-Royce, for example, and they would come with a very specific criteria and they would say, we want an anti-corrosive engine component. This is what we're looking for. And then the GEEK staff can say, we believe this graphene is going to be best suited to you. Or better yet, they can benchmark graphenes against each other. Since we have joined the GEEK, we have been really overwhelmed with the amount of interest that we've had. We believe that we have landed, a huge amount of the projects that have come through their doors. And again, we're in a very, very privileged position where this amount of interest that is incoming for us as a small company has really been very, very significant. And so we are, of course, expanding our business development team. I would say the one thing to be mindful is that customers do pay for all of the research or almost all of the research. Sometimes we don't get the full clarity on who the customer is or exactly what the results are until the project has completed, just due to confidentiality agreements. So there are a number of these large projects that should be wrapping up in the next few months, and we are very, very excited to be announcing the data. As far as we've been told, every single project that we have done has received truly astounding performance results. And so what we are focused on, because graphene can be used to positively improve almost any material that you can think of, we are focused on driving towards revenue, of course, for shareholders and for the overall health of the company really as soon as possible. So with that in mind, we are heavily focused on composites and coatings. The reason for these markets is they move quickly, and we especially want to avoid any regulatory hurdles. We want to avoid anything, for example, that's a load-bearing component. There's a number of safety concerns that would be associated with components like that. Coatings are especially interesting to the company because it's more an addition to an existing piece, and often you can bring something to market very, very quickly. So again, with materials, there's a large amount of testing that you really need to accomplish with different customers before you can fully commercialize a product. On average, there is 18 months in a development cycle. We are focused on trying to narrow that down as quickly as we can. The GEEK is a great vehicle for us to be able to do that because the customers are already, they've already made the decision to use graphene. So at that point, we have all of the expertise that we need, and we can really start to shorten that cycle. I would say lubricants, we have fantastic data there. Oil and gas companies do move a little bit slower. So this is something that it's not that we're ignoring, but we would either need a partner or we will tackle this more fully when we have revenue. Cement and concrete, it's a very price sensitive market. With that said, we do have some recent very, very strong data that we've done in combination with Arizona State University that they have published in one of their academic journals, with only 0.02 by weight percent graphene added to the binder, and the binder is only 30% of the overall resulting material. That means that the cost point is almost insignificant to the customer. And because we can increase the strength by more than 20%, the customer could then use 20% less cement or concrete to really get the same result. And then energy storage, again, we have fantastic results here. We have recently announced a partnership with NEI Corporation, and we actually do have a product line that has just been brought to market. So we do expect to be driving towards revenue in energy storage. And again, this is a good example. We're not ignoring this market. We need to partner with groups like NEI to really move this forward so we can continue to focus on composites and coatings and, of course, see revenue as quickly as possible. So with all of this in mind, we do have, again, more than 60 customers. So this is only a snapshot of what we're working on. We have been speaking with a large automotive company, and we have now done multiple trials within multiple areas. The one I'm going to speak to today is regarding automotive composites. And so this is projected to scale up at a certain point this year. Automotive does traditionally move a little bit slower than some industries. This was one of the customer contacts that was really incoming interest. So it's not that we're targeting automotive. This was really interest that was expressed in HydroGraph. This should be a very, very large deal once commercialized for HydroGraph, in excess of 1,000 metric tons of graphene annually. And again, we are expecting the purchase order to that would be associated with a pilot industrial scale up. So that would be producing hundreds of kilos of product. We are also in discussion with the world's largest PET producers. There's a pretty significant group of customers that make up this profile. This is FDA approval contingent. And again, this is just overwhelming interest that we have felt from customers. So we are about halfway through our FDA testing. We've had some recent data come in that we believe will be pushing this forward. But I want to reinforce here that, again, as everyone's aware, I want to avoid any regulatory hurdles. These PET producers don't just have PET, of course. They have a number of other polymers that we can move forward with, HDPE, polypropylene, and so on. So it's great that we have this data with PET because it's really our foot in the door, and now that's really extended conversations throughout multiple product lines. And again, these are huge amounts of graphene that would be required, and the interest is very well dispersed globally. I would say the fastest moving and one that I'm personally more excited about is these tactical fibers. So these engineering fibers, that would include your nylon PA6, it would include PEEK. We are expecting a pilot industrial scale up to commence once the current trial is completed. This is a massive opportunity for the company. We are expecting, again, more than 1,000 tons of annual consumption. It would take a gradual ramp up to get to that stage. But the companies, there are multiple companies that we're speaking to. One is a US-based company, and they are moving very, very fast. These fibers would then be used in end markets that would include defense applications, aerospace, automotive, and more. And just to reinforce, we generate data at the Geek. We collaborate with customers at the Geek, which is a great channel to market for us. And then once those projects complete, we are enabled to use that data internally with our business development team. And of course, then we grow our customer pipeline internally. So our path to market, as I've mentioned, is heavily focused on composites, coatings, and I would say a close third is batteries. But again, we're looking to partner there. We are still interested in other markets, and that is going to include a lot more than concretes and lubricants. You can also include biosensors and so forth. We are not ignoring these markets, but again, as a small company, we would look to partner with others to really bring those to market. And so back to our Hyperion system, we really believe our defining feature is, of course, our scalability and really the beauty of our production process, which is fully patented. We use readily available feedstock gases, We are planning a large, as mentioned, centralized facility, which will enable pipeline access to acetylene, significantly improving our margins. But more importantly, from an engineering perspective, we will operate much more efficiently once we have that in place. And then through our reaction, this explosion that we force with acetylene and oxygen, we create a very, very high value material. Acetylene is difficult and expensive to store and ship. Graphene is very easy. So we will just maintain all of this centrally, and we will be shipping out tonnage amounts of graphene worldwide, really. And just to really reinforce, we do not use any graphite. We are not dependent on China for any reason. Everything will be produced in America. And again, all of the components in our reactor, those are produced in the US. And actually, our inventor, Dr. Chris Sorensen, is a Vietnam vet. So I think it's a brilliant story, especially in the current climate. And so HydroGraph's graphene really helps customers to increase the mechanical properties of their materials, which really allows for less material to be used to reach the same performance target. I'm bringing this up to show that there is a significant amount of carbon emission reduction possible with that method, also without increasing the cost to the customer. Because we're adding such a small amount of graphene, and because our graphene is so powerful, we find that really about 1/10 the amount of our graphene is able to drive very significant performance benefits as compared to other graphenes in the market. So again, it's often at cost break even to the customer, and it's a very, very sustainable approach because we can significantly lower carbon emissions, both in the reduction in material, and also graphene can really improve different production processes. So to really explain the energy demand, as I'm sure is obvious with an explosion, we use virtually no energy. We use energy for the electrodes and, for example, for the vacuum that pulls the graphene into collections. We are clocking in at 2.7 megajoules per kilogram as the energy demand for producing graphene. Most graphene is produced with chemical exfoliation, that would be at 13. And then most of the synthetic producers, that would be our closest competitors, would be microwave plasma. And again, just to reinforce, no chemicals or solutions as part of the process, minimal energy consumption, and no greenhouse gas emissions. Syngas is not a greenhouse gas. Again, it is a commodity gas, and we will arrange an offtake agreement for that at scale. And so to discuss our business model, we only are engaged in selling graphene. We do not sell or license any of the reactors. And again, we believe that we produce identical batches of pristine graphene at industrial scale. That might not sound like a strong statement, but if you really dive into the industry, we believe this is an industry first. We think that we do this very well, and we think that this is really what allows us to have an edge. We will, as mentioned, employ a centralized production model that will keep our IP secure and further boost our margins. And again, we're going to have a massive amount of operational efficiencies that we'll see with that. We will, as we grow, basically replicate that model and establish production in key geographical regions. I would like to focus predominantly on the US at the moment, though as the company grows, I think that we will very likely need to look at additional locations that would be tied to customer demand. Further, as we grow, we will expand our capabilities to include formulation and master batching. All of that really means is we want to make it easy for customers to use our graphene. Not every customer wants to use a black fluffy powder, so we will make dispersions, we will make really whatever we need to, and the announcement we have with NEI is a great example of us creating a product that is really a drop-in solution for customers. Of course, everything is patented. We have the original fractal graphene production method patented. This was granted in 2016. We have applied for a number of patents to further improve our IP moat really around that process. And we also have a number of patents on applying graphene. So I'll also point out reactive graphene. That is really what gives us our graphene derivatives. And we have applied for a number of additional patents just in the past month. As a synopsis of our history, the discovery happened in 2014 at Kansas State University by Dr. Chris Sorensen. which really led to the discovery of this detonation process. The patent was granted in 2016, and HydroGraph, which was then called Carbon 2D, launched in 2017. We listed publicly on the CSE in December of 2021. And I would say really in the past year is when we've seen by far the most growth. We did have a change in management. I made significant updates to our business model and to our overall strategy. And we feel that now we are very well poised to really tackle the customer demand that we have. And again, we're in a very privileged position where this interest is incoming. So now it's really up to us to not only deliver, close these contracts, but of course, scale up production and our business development team and further grow that pipeline. We do have a number of catalysts that are upcoming. We have a number of LOIs, purchase orders, and we do believe that we will have our first customer contract signed this year. Just as a brief summary on our capital structure, we do have about 256 million shares outstanding. We have 70 million warrants outstanding, and even despite the recent market volatility, all of these warrants are in the money. Most of them are priced at 18 cents, and that's Canadian, 18 cents and 20 cents. So the dollar value on that 70 million warrants is roughly $14 million Canadian. So we are, of course, in a healthy position regarding capital, and we do believe that we'll be able to use this to further scale up production and our corporate team. Thank you. We can move to questions. So I have a question. How close are you to the state of commercialization? Will there be a pilot scale up before a full commercial order? And if so, when might we expect that? So yes, we are engaged in a number of, I would say, pilot scale ups with various companies. We are anticipating some of the industrial scale ups that would really be the last step before we close customer contracts. And again, internally, we are extremely confident that we will be closing contracts this year. Next question is, can you provide a bit more color around the strength of your IP portfolio and how HydroGraph came to create or acquire the IP? I think this is a good question. And, as mentioned, Dr. Sorensen discovered this through Kansas State University, where he was a physics professor in 2014, patent granted in 2016. We do license the patent from Kansas State University, which is very typical. It is with a 4% royalty. We do have the ability to buy it outright, and that is something that economically, I think is going to make a lot of sense once we start landing contracts. But again, we're very confident that legally, we are the only company that can be exploding hydrocarbon gases for the production of graphene. With that said, we are always thinking of ways that we can further improve our moat. So next question, do you expect the current political landscape to shape contracts? This is, I would say I think something that is to our benefit. We will maintain US manufacturing. Most of the companies, and again, we have global interests, but I do believe that most of the companies that are willing to move quickly are located in the US, which I think is to our advantage. Because all of our components for the reactor are produced in the US, and we plan to have predominantly US manufacturing, especially initially, we think that there will be some benefits to us. Next question, can you talk to future issuance of shares or warrants? I would like to avoid warrants. I think that we have had, a lot of interest lately, both from potential investors and from customers. I don't feel that we are in a position that we need to look to further dilution. As mentioned, we have a number of warrants outstanding that are already in the money, worth approximately 14 million Canadian. So it could be that if we want to scale quickly, if we would like to list on NASDAQ, that could coincide with a round in the future. But for the moment, no, we believe that we have enough capital. Another question, how will you finance continuing operations? So we do believe that we are well financed currently based on what we're looking at. And we do believe that once we start to have some of these commercial milestones hit, we won't need to be using equity capital. We can look at project financing and a number of other methods really to secure additional capital. And then we have, what is your current monthly production? Do you hold inventory? Yes, monthly production does vary because we are in the process of kind of moving production to a large scale facility. So by the beginning of 2026, it is going to be massively upgraded. But again, we have more than enough inventory. We have roughly a ton in inventory of graphene. And just to speak to the commercial pipelines that we're dealing with, we're selling kilo amounts right now. So that is more than enough. And if we need to, increase our production right now, we absolutely can. At any moment, we can further improve those numbers. And so, when do we feel would be a realistic time frame for revenue generation? So we are starting to see revenue come in. Again, it is tied to purchase orders and some of these engineering contracts that we have with various customers. We believe that we will have roughly $1 million this year. I understand that's not a large figure, but this is tied to the pipeline growing, and it is tied to these projects moving to the next stage. We will have, I would say, meaningful revenue as soon as 2026. And we have a question. Could you elaborate on how I became interested in graphene? And then you say, good presentation. Thank you for that. I am, I would say, kind of a nerd at heart. So I love anything that's new technologies, new ways to improve things. I just find it fascinating. And I think graphene for me specifically, when I first heard this pitch in Vancouver, I think I was one of the only people in the room that really felt hooked with it, or really, I don't know, that it registered with. So I love not only the impact that graphene can have across various industries, but our specific production method just made so much sense to me, being synthetic, scalable, of course, low energy. It made sense that chemical reaction would really yield a very high purity resulting material. And I think, with graphene, what excites me, because what we're talking about today is relatively boring. We're talking about plastics and concrete. The future is going to be absolutely fantastic. What we're going to be able to do with electronics is going to be really mind-blowing. So very, very excited to get to that stage. And I think we're out of time. So thank you so much for everyone. Thank you everyone for your time. If there's additional questions, do feel free to reach out.